I gave my father-in-law 2 lucrative contracts, thinking it would help our family grow stronger. But just 1 week later, he called me crying, saying everything was gone. At first, I felt pity, until I checked the bank account. My hands went cold, my world spun, and 10 minutes later, I made one call that changed everything. And that call? It destroyed every lie they built behind my back. "Mom," he said, "the money is gone, all of it." My hands trembled as I held the phone tighter, listening to my father-in-law's shaky voice on the other end. His breathing was uneven, like a man who had just run from something terrifying. "Please don't be angry," he said. I don't know how it happened. The contractors ran away. The suppliers vanished. I tried everything, but the money is gone." For a moment, I couldn't even speak. My heart thudded loudly in my chest. Gone. How could everything be gone? Those contracts weren't just small deals. They were my life's work, my trust, and my family's future. I took a deep breath and looked around my small home office. The blueprints, the invoices, the signed agreements, all neatly stacked on the table, suddenly looked like a cruel joke. "Dad," I finally said softly, "give me 10 minutes. He paused. 10 minutes? For what? I didn't answer. I hung up, walked to my desk, and unlocked my phone. My fingers didn't shake anymore. They were steady, too steady. I opened my contact list and scrolled to one name. A name that could change everything. And then, I made one call. That single call would turn the story of our family upside down. But to understand why that call was necessary, you need to know how it all began. When I first married into the Sanders family, everyone said I was lucky. My husband, Richard, was their only son, a calm, quiet man who loved me deeply. His father, Mr. Sanders, was a proud man, strict but charming. He owned a small construction business, and he liked to remind everyone that he built his first house with his bare hands. At first, we got along well. I cooked for him whenever he visited, and he'd tell stories about the old days, how he used to work under the scorching sun with nothing but a hammer and faith. I admired that. But as years passed, I noticed something else. He liked control. Every time someone did better than him, he'd find a way to pull them down gently, with a smile that hid envy. When Richard and I started our own construction firm, he didn't seem too happy about it. "Be careful, son," he said one night, sipping his tea. "Business can destroy families." I thought it was fatherly advice. I didn't know it was a warning. Our company grew fast. Within 2 years, we had 2 major contracts with the city. Big money. Big responsibility. But then Richard fell ill. The doctors said he needed surgery and months of rest. That left me alone to handle everything. One day, Mr. Sanders came over, wearing his usual polite smile. "Daughter," he said, using that sweet word that always made me lower my guard. "I can help you. You've done enough. Let me take these contracts. I'll make sure the work goes smoothly." I hesitated. The contracts were delicate, and losing them could ruin everything. But he was family, and he had experience. He even promised, "I'll make you proud." I looked at Richard, weak in bed but hopeful. "Let him help," he whispered. "He's my dad. He won't let us down." So I did something I would regret. I handed both contracts to my father-in-law, signed, sealed, and trusted. The first week passed quietly. He didn't call, but I didn't worry. I thought he was working hard. Then on the 7th day he called me. His voice was trembling. "Daughter," he began. "Something terrible has happened." My heart dropped. "What do you mean?" "The money, everything, it's gone. The contractors vanished. They took the funds and ran. I was fooled." I felt dizzy. "What? How much?" "All of it," he whispered. "Both contracts. Every cent." I stood still. My mind went blank. I could barely breathe. Richard was sleeping in the next room. He didn't even know yet. I wanted to scream, cry, or throw something, but instead I just said quietly, "Give me 10 minutes." I hung up. Then I sat down. For those 10 minutes, I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just thought. Thought about every word he said, every look he gave me before taking the contract, every forced smile at dinner. I remembered the workers who told me they hadn't received their payment yet, even though I had transferred the funds. I remembered how Mr. Sanders once said, No one should control you unless they're family. It all connected. That's when I unlocked my phone and made that one call. To someone who owed me a favor. Hello. The voice on the other end said. It's me, I replied calmly. I think my father-in-law just made a very expensive mistake. I need you to find out where the money went. There was a pause, then the voice said. Understood. I ended the call and took a deep breath. The room felt heavier, quieter. I looked at the framed photo on the wall, Richard and me, smiling at our wedding. And I whispered to it. I'm sorry, love, but your father just crossed a line. That night, I couldn't sleep. My heart felt like a drum in my chest. I walked to the window, staring at the city lights outside. Somewhere out there, my father-in-law was probably thinking I'd stay quiet. He thought I'd cry and move on. But he didn't know me. When you take everything from a mother, a wife, a builder, you awaken something stronger than anger. The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was the same voice from last night. I found something, he said. You might want to sit down for this. I gripped the phone tighter. What did you find? He hesitated. Your father-in-law didn't lose the money. He transferred it to his own account. And he's planning to leave the city tonight. My knees went weak. My chest burned. My lips trembled. But I forced a smile. Thank you, I whispered. You've done enough. Then I looked at the clock. It was just past 9 a.m. I picked up my car keys. By noon, I would be standing face to face with the man who thought he could steal from me and walk away. And that moment, when our eyes met again, would mark the beginning of a storm no one in our family would ever forget. The sound of my car engine echoed through the empty morning streets. The sun was bright, but my heart felt dark. I drove straight to Mr. Sanders' house without telling anyone, not even Richard. I didn't want him to worry, not yet. Every second on that drive felt like a lifetime. My fingers gripped the steering wheel tightly, and my mind replayed his trembling voice over and over. Please don't be angry. I tried everything, but the money is gone. He lied. When I reached his house, the gate was open. That was strange. He was always careful about keeping things locked. I parked quietly and walked in. The house was silent, except for the faint sound of a suitcase zipper upstairs. He was packing. I walked up the stairs slowly, every step heavier than the last. When I reached his room, the door was halfway open. Inside, Mr. Sanders stood beside his bed, stuffing clothes and files into a brown leather bag. His back was turned. Going somewhere, Dad? I said softly. He froze. His shoulders stiffened. Slowly, he turned around. His face went pale when he saw me standing there. Daughter, I was just packing. I finished his sentence. Yes, I can see that. He forced a laugh, but it sounded nervous. It's not what you think. I'm going to the site. There's still a chance to fix this mess. I stepped closer. You mean the mess where the money disappeared into your own account? The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? I tilted my head. Don't lie to me, Dad. You didn't lose the money. You moved it. You transferred every cent to yourself, and now you're planning to run away. For a moment he didn't speak. Then he dropped his bag and sat on the bed, covering his face with both hands. His shoulders shook, not from guilt, but from fear. I didn't mean to, he whispered. I just wanted to borrow it for a while. I was going to return it. Borrow, I repeated, my voice shaking now. You took contracts worth millions, lied to me, and hid it from your own son, and you call that borrowing? He lifted his head, eyes wet but defensive. You wouldn't understand. You're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. But me? I've built for others all my life and have nothing to show for it. I just wanted to start something new before I die. His words pierced me, but not the way he thought. It wasn't sympathy I felt. It was disbelief. So you stole from your family to start something new? Do you even hear yourself? He looked away ashamed. Please don't tell Richard. He'll never forgive me. I stared at him for a long time. Oh, I'm not going to tell him, I said coldly. But someone else will. Before he could respond, I took my phone from my bag and pressed a button. Do you remember the call I made last night? I asked quietly. He frowned. What call? I smiled, though my heart ached. The one to the city's legal board. They already know what happened. And they're on their way. His eyes widened in horror. You couldn't. Oh, I did. Just then, there was a knock at the door downstairs. The sound echoed through the house like thunder. Mr. Sanders jumped to his feet. You called the police? No, I said calmly, walking to the window. I called the city inspectors. They have your signatures, the bank transfers, and all the paperwork you signed. You used your own name, Dad. You didn't even try to hide it. He began pacing, mumbling to himself. No, this can't be happening. They'll ruin me. They'll take everything. I looked at him steadily. You already took everything from us. He stopped and looked at me with tears in his eyes. Please, daughter. I'll give it back. I swear I'll return every penny. Don't let them do this to me. For a moment, I hesitated. Part of me remembered all the times he'd called me daughter. All the times he smiled at our dinner table. But then I remembered Richard lying sick at home, trusting his father. And I remembered the workers who hadn't been paid because of this man's greed. So I said quietly, it's too late for that. The knock came again, louder this time. I turned and started walking toward the stairs. But just as I reached the door, he shouted behind me. You'll regret this. You think you've won, but you've destroyed this family. I stopped at the doorway and looked back. No, Dad. You destroyed it the day you chose greed over love. Then I walked downstairs and opened the door. 2 men in city uniforms stepped in. Mrs. Sanders? One asked. Yes, I said softly. He's upstairs. They nodded and went up. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, listening to their footsteps, their voices, the moment they entered his room. There was a pause, then the sound of my father-in-law's voice breaking into a cry. I didn't move. I just stood there, gripping the stair railing, trying not to let the tears fall. After a few minutes, they brought him down, holding his arm gently. His face looked older, smaller, defeated. As they walked past me, he didn't look up. He just whispered, "Tell Richard I'm sorry." I wanted to answer, but no words came out. The door closed behind them, leaving me in silence. For a moment, I thought I would collapse. But then my phone rang again. I picked it up quickly, hoping it wasn't Richard yet. It wasn't. It was the voice from last night again, the same man who helped me trace the money. Ma'am, he said carefully. I thought you should know something. There's more. I froze. More? What do you mean? He sighed. Your father-in-law wasn't working alone. Someone else signed off those documents with him. Someone close to you. My heart skipped a beat. Who? I whispered. I can't say yet, he said. But you might want to check your husband's signature on the second contract. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. What are you saying? I'm saying, he replied, that your husband might not be as innocent as you think. My breath caught in my throat. My legs went weak. Find proof, I said in a trembling voice. Find out everything. I will, he said, then hung up. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. For a long time, I stood there in shock, staring at nothing. Then slowly, I walked to my husband's study. I opened the drawer where he kept his files, and there, under a stack of papers, I saw it. A signed copy of the second contract, with 2 signatures. One was mine, the other was Richard's. And right under it, in tiny letters, was the name of the same fake company my father-in-law used to steal the money. My hands began to shake. The man I loved, my husband, had signed it too. The room started spinning. My knees felt weak. I dropped to the chair, staring at the paper as tears filled my eyes. Why, Richard? I whispered. Why would you do this to me? The clock ticked slowly, each sound echoing in the empty room. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about betrayal. And the storm that was coming had only just begun. I sat there for a long time, frozen, staring at the contract as if the words might change. My husband's name, Richard Sanders, was right there, written in his clean, careful handwriting. I traced the letters with my finger, hoping somehow it wasn't real. But it was. He had signed the same contract his father used to take all our money. My heart pounded so fast it hurt. The house was silent except for the sound of the clock ticking on the wall. I wanted to scream, but my voice was trapped in my throat. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. No. There must be a mistake, I told myself. Richard was sick. He couldn't have done this. Maybe Dad forged his name. I clung to that thought like a lifeline. But deep down, I knew the truth was heavier than I wanted to believe. I folded the paper carefully and hid it in my bag. My hands were shaking. Then I took a deep breath and walked to our bedroom. Richard was still lying in bed, pale and weak, with a book beside him. He smiled when he saw me. "Hey honey," he said softly. "You've been out for a while. Everything okay?" His voice was calm, gentle, the same voice that once promised me forever. I forced a small smile. "Everything's fine," I said quietly. "Just had some things to handle." He frowned. "You look tired. Did something happen?" I wanted to ask him right then and there. "Why did you sign that paper? Why did you betray me?" But instead I shook my head. "Nothing serious. Just work." He smiled again and reached for my hand. "You always work too hard." I nodded, sitting beside him, pretending to listen as he talked about how he missed going to the office. But my mind was miles away. Every time he looked at me, my chest tightened. I couldn't see the man I loved anymore. I saw a stranger hiding behind kind eyes. When he fell asleep, I stood up and walked quietly to the living room. I needed air. My phone buzzed. It was the same unknown number from before. "I found more," the voice said as soon as I answered. I swallowed hard. "Go on." "Your husband's name wasn't forged. He personally authorized the payment to your father-in-law's fake company. He knew exactly what was happening." My breath caught. "No," I whispered. "That can't be true." "It is. And there's more. You might want to check the joint account. The money didn't go directly to your father-in-law. Half of it was rerouted through your husband's personal savings account before it disappeared." I pressed a hand to my mouth, my eyes filling with tears. "You mean Richard helped him steal it?" "Yes. I'm sorry." The call ended, and for a moment, the world went silent. I stared out the window, watching the clouds move slowly across the sky, but all I could see was betrayal. My husband and his father, working together, against me, against our own company, against everything I built with them. Why? I walked to the bedroom again. He was still asleep, peaceful, unaware that the truth was sitting right beside him. I sat down at the edge of the bed, watching him, my tears falling silently. "Why did you do it, Richard?" I whispered. "Was I not enough? Was our life not enough?" He stirred in his sleep, but didn't wake. I stayed there for a while, staring at him, until I finally made a decision. If he could lie to me this easily, then I would learn to lie too, but only long enough to uncover everything. The next morning I made him breakfast, his favorite pancakes with honey, and acted as if nothing had happened. He smiled, grateful. "You're too good to me," he said. "I just want you to get better," I replied, smiling back. "That's all that matters." Inside, my heart was burning. When he went back to bed after breakfast, I slipped out quietly to the office. I called my assistant, Claire, and told her to bring me the company's latest transaction records. She looked confused. "But ma'am, I thought Mr. Sanders was handling those last month." I froze. "Mr. Sanders? My husband or his father?" She hesitated. "Your husband. He said he'd review the payments before sending them to the contractors." That was it. Proof. The betrayal went deeper than I thought. When Claire left, I sat in my office chair and opened my laptop. I went through the records line by line. Every transfer, every invoice, every signature, my husband's name was there. He had authorized everything. And right at the bottom of the list, I saw something that made my stomach twist. Another new contract, dated just 2 days ago, signed by Richard. The payment hadn't gone through yet, but the company name was the same fake one his father used. They were still planning to move money. Even after everything, he was still trying. I closed my laptop slowly and took a deep breath. My tears were gone now. What replaced them was something stronger. Cold. Determined. I picked up my phone and dialed the same number again. "It's me," I said. "I need your help one more time." The voice on the other end replied, "What do you need?" "I want proof. Real proof. Every transaction, every document, every message between my husband and his father. I want it all." There was a pause. "You're going after him?" I looked at the framed photo on my desk, our wedding picture. We were smiling so wide back then, holding hands, eyes full of trust. "Yes," I said quietly. "I am. But not yet. First, I'll let him think everything is fine. I'll smile, I'll cook, I'll love him. And when the time comes, I'll take everything back." That night, I went home early. Richard was sitting on the couch, watching TV. He smiled when he saw me. "You're home early. That's new." I smiled too, forcing calm into my voice. "I just missed you." He laughed and patted the seat beside him. "Come here." I sat down next to him. He wrapped his arm around me, and I rested my head on his shoulder. We sat like that for a while, silent, watching a movie I wasn't paying attention to. My heart was screaming, but I kept it quiet. Because I knew now what I had to do. He thought he had won. He thought I would never find out. But I would make him tell me everything. With his own mouth. As the movie ended, he kissed my forehead and said softly, "I don't know what I'd do without you." I smiled back, my heart breaking. "You'll never have to find out," I whispered. But deep inside, I knew, when the truth came out, everything would change forever. The next day, I received a message from the man who was helping me investigate. It was short, but it made my blood run cold. "Meet me tonight. I found something that will change everything you think you know." I stared at the message, my heart pounding. What could possibly be worse than finding out your husband and father-in-law stole from you? I was about to find out. The night air was cold and sharp, carrying that heavy silence that always comes before a storm. I parked my car in front of the small cafe at the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asks questions and secrets stay whispered. Inside, the lights were dim. Only 2 other people were there, sitting by the window. My eyes found him immediately, the man who'd been helping me all along. His name was Mr. Blake, a quiet investigator who owed me a favor from a past business deal. He stood when he saw me and gave a small nod. "You came," he said. "I couldn't sleep anyway," I replied, sitting down across from him. "You said you found something. What is it?" He didn't speak at once. Instead, he slid a brown folder across the table toward me. My heart started pounding as I opened it. Inside were printed copies of emails, bank transfers, and photos of signed documents. But one page caught my attention. It was an email, sent from my husband's account to a name I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "She suspects nothing." My stomach twisted. I looked up at Mr. Blake. "Who's this email to?" He sighed. "That's the part one didn't want to tell you over the phone. The account belongs to your husband's secretary. Her name is Laura." I frowned. "Laura? She's just his assistant." "She's more than that," he said carefully. "We found out your husband and Laura have been in contact for months. Bank records show multiple payments to her under false names. And," he hesitated, looking almost sorry, "they've been meeting secretly. Often. Mostly in hotels near the project sites." For a moment, the whole room spun. I stared at him, unable to speak. My throat went dry. "You mean?" "Yes," he said softly. "Your husband is having an affair. And she helped him and his father move the money." I covered my mouth, trying not to make a sound. The cafe around me faded away. All I could hear was the pounding in my ears. Richard. My Richard. The man who once said he'd never lie to me, who held my hand through every storm, had not only stolen from me, but betrayed me in the worst way possible. My heart broke into 1,000 sharp pieces. I closed the folder slowly. "How long have they been doing this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Since before your husband fell sick," Mr. Blake said. "We believe the illness wasn't as bad as he claimed. It gave him time to stay home, control your company remotely, and hide the transactions. His father handled the outside deals. Laura did the paperwork." I leaned back in my chair, trying to breathe. "So everything, the contracts, the missing money, it was all part of their plan?" He nodded. "Yes. They didn't plan to run away immediately. They were moving the money slowly, so it would look like business expenses. But when his father got nervous and tried to take all the money at once, everything fell apart. Tears blurred my vision. I wiped them away angrily. He looked me in the eyes and told me he loved me. Mr. Blake's expression softened. People can lie with words, but they can't hide their actions. I looked down at the folder again. Each page was like a knife. My husband's name, his signature, his messages, his betrayal. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I looked up and asked quietly, "Can you give me copies of all of this?" He nodded. "They're already yours." I took the folder and stood up. "Thank you, Mr. Blake. You've done more than enough." He looked at me concerned. "What are you going to do now?" I hesitated at the door. "I'm going to go home," I said. "And I'm going to act like nothing happened until I decide how to end this." The drive home was quiet. My hands were shaking, but my face was calm. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my heart had gone numb. Richard was sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. He smiled when he saw me. "Hey, you're out late," he said, his voice warm. I forced a small smile. "Just went to meet a client." He nodded. "You work too much, you know?" I laughed softly, hiding the ache in my chest. "Someone has to." We went inside. He talked about random things, dinner, the neighbors, his new project ideas. I listened, nodding, pretending. Every word from his mouth felt like poison, but I swallowed my pain and smiled. When he went to bed, I stayed in the living room, holding the folder on my lap. I opened it again, staring at the photos of him with Laura, laughing, holding hands. The man I loved wasn't the man I thought I knew. And the man who betrayed me had no idea what was coming. Because now, I wasn't just a wife. I was a woman with proof. The next morning, Richard woke up cheerful. "You're up early," he said. "I couldn't sleep," I replied. He stretched and smiled. "I'm thinking I might go back to the office soon. I feel better." "Really?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Yeah. I want to get back to work. Maybe we can rebuild what your father-in-law ruined." I smiled faintly. "That's a good idea. In fact, I think we should start fresh, with new partners." He grinned. "You always have the best ideas." Inside, my heart was breaking all over again. He kissed my forehead, then went to shower. As soon as I heard the water running, I took my phone and called Mr. Blake. "It's time," I said quietly. "Start preparing the legal report. I want everything documented, the fraud, the stolen contracts, the affair. And send copies to my lawyer." "Understood," he said. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" I looked at the bathroom door. I could hear Richard humming softly inside, like a man without a care in the world. "Yes," I whispered. "I'm ready." Later that day, I went to the company's main office. I called a meeting with the board and our legal advisor. They all looked surprised when I arrived with the folder in hand. "Mrs. Sanders," one of them said, "we weren't expecting you. Is something wrong?" I placed the folder on the table and opened it. "Something is very wrong," I said calmly. "And it's time you all knew the truth." For the next 30 minutes, I explained everything. How my father-in-law stole the money, how my husband helped him, how they used fake companies and false accounts. I showed them every document, every message, every signature. When I finished, the room was silent. No one moved. Finally, the lawyer spoke. "Mrs. Sanders, this is shocking. But with this evidence, we can take full control of the company and press criminal charges if you wish." I nodded slowly. "Do it. File the papers quietly. I don't want him to know until it's too late." The lawyer hesitated. "And your husband?" I looked down at the photo of him smiling with Laura. Then I closed the folder gently. "Leave him to me." That night, when I came home, Richard was waiting at the table with dinner ready. "Surprise," he said cheerfully. "I made spaghetti tonight." I smiled, sitting across from him. "That's sweet of you." We ate in silence for a while. He talked about small things, whether work, nothing important. I nodded, pretending to listen, while inside I was planning. When we finished, he reached across the table and held my hand. "You know, I don't say this enough," he said softly. "I'm lucky to have you." I met his eyes and smiled, a calm, quiet smile that hid the storm behind it. "I know. I said simply. He laughed, not realizing that the woman smiling back at him already knew everything. Not realizing that by tomorrow, his entire world would begin to crumble. The next morning, I received a message from my lawyer. Documents filed. Arrest warrants will be issued soon. Stay calm. I looked at Richard sitting in the living room, sipping his coffee. He looked so peaceful, so sure that nothing could touch him. But peace built on lies never lasts. And the sound that broke that peace came moments later. A loud knock on the door. Richard frowned and looked at me. Are you expecting anyone? I shook my head slowly. No. The knock came again, harder this time. He stood up to answer it. When he opened the door and saw the two officers standing there, his face turned pale. Mr. Richard Sanders? One officer asked. You are under investigation for fraud and theft of company funds. His mouth fell open. What? There must be a mistake. I stood behind him, calm and silent. The officer continued. We have evidence of your involvement in multiple illegal transfers and falsified documents. Richard turned to me, eyes wide. Evelyn, what's going on? I met his gaze steadily. I think you already know, Richard. His face twisted in shock. You did this? I didn't answer. He took a step toward me, desperate. Evelyn, please. Let me explain. But I just looked at him, tears gathering in my eyes. Explain it to them, I said softly. As the officers led him out, the house fell into silence once again. I stood there, watching through the window as the man I once loved was taken away in handcuffs. But somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't over yet. Because betrayal runs deep. And his father was still out there. And the storm that started with one call was about to reach its fiercest point. The day of the auction came. The morning was cloudy, heavy with tension. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my navy blue suit. My reflection looked calm, but inside I was a storm. Today was the day everything would end. I took a deep breath, grabbed my phone and headed out. My lawyer met me at the parking lot of the auction hall. Are you sure about this, Mrs. Sanders? He asked quietly. Once this begins, there's no going back. I nodded slowly. I'm sure. I didn't start this fight, but I will finish it. Inside, the hall was packed. Investors, lawyers, company executives. All of them whispering, waiting. My father-in-law sat at the front row, wearing his best suit. His face was calm, confident, like he already knew he had won. Richard sat beside him, eyes hollow. He couldn't even look at me. As I walked past them, their heads turned. My father-in-law gave me a tight smile. Linda, he said coolly, I didn't expect you to show up. Brave of you. I smiled back. Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world. The auction began. The first few items were small company properties. Then came the big one, the contract files that represented ownership of my business. Lot 37, the announcer said. Full ownership of Sanders Construction Limited. Bidding starts at $200,000. Hands shot up across the room. I stayed silent, waiting. My father-in-law raised his hand confidently. 500,000. The crowd murmured. I waited another second, then raised mine. 1 million. The room went still. My father-in-law's smirk faded slightly. He looked at Richard, who stared blankly ahead. Then he raised his hand again. 1.5. I didn't flinch. 2 million. His eyes narrowed. You don't have that money. I smiled faintly. Who said it was my money? Gasps echoed through the room. My lawyer handed the auctioneer an envelope. Inside were proof of funds documents, backed by the investors who had supported me after hearing my story. My father-in-law's jaw tightened. This isn't over, he muttered. But I knew it was. The bidding ended. The gavel came down with a loud thud. Lot 37, sold to Mrs. Linda Sanders. The hall erupted in whispers and flashes of camera lights. I exhaled slowly, my chest trembling. It was over. I had won back what was mine. Or so I thought. Because just as I was about to leave, a voice echoed from the back of the hall. Wait. I turned. It was Richard. He stood, his face pale, his voice shaking. Linda, you don't understand. The room went silent again. He walked toward me, hands trembling. I didn't steal from you for myself. Dad forced me. He said if I didn't help him, he'd destroy your company and ruin your reputation. He threatened to expose something. I frowned. Expose what? He hesitated. The truth about where your initial funding came from. My blood ran cold. What truth? He swallowed hard, glancing nervously at his father. The money you used to start the company wasn't from the bank loan you thought it was. It was Dad's money. He transferred it into your account secretly through a fake loan to control you later. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. You're lying. But his voice cracked. No, Linda. I wish I was. You were just a pawn. He planned everything, since the day we got married. The crowd gasped. My father-in-law's face turned red with fury. You fool, he shouted. You think telling her now will save you? I stared at them both, my world spinning. My success, my pride, my independence. Had it all been built on a lie? Richard stepped closer, tears in his eyes. I didn't want you to find out this way. But I swear, I only went along because I wanted to protect you. I felt dizzy. I looked from him to his father. One looked broken. The other looked monstrous. Then something inside me hardened. I lifted my chin and said clearly, you both used me. You lied, you cheated, and you tried to destroy everything I built. But you forgot one thing. Paper money doesn't make a company. People do. Integrity does. And I have that. You don't. The crowd murmured. My father-in-law sneered. And what will you do now, Linda? Sue us. You'll lose half your assets in court. I smiled. Who said I was going to court? He frowned. Then what? Before he could finish, my phone buzzed. I held it up and pressed play. It was a voice recording. His voice. Don't worry, Richard, it said. Once the money's in my account, we'll fake the loss. Linda's too soft. She won't suspect a thing. The entire room gasped. I lowered the phone slowly. That recording was taken the day you called me, crying about the missing money. You thought I'd panic and forgive you. Instead, I called my security team. We've been recording every word since. His face drained of color. You can't. Oh, I can, I said quietly. And I already did. The police are outside. At that moment, the doors opened. 2 officers entered, badges raised. Mr. Sanders, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement and forgery. My father-in-law tried to run, but they grabbed him. Richard just stood there, crying quietly. As they led his father away, he turned to me, eyes full of regret. I'm sorry, Linda. For everything. I looked at him for a long time. I loved you, Richard. But you chose him over me. That's something no sorry can fix. He lowered his head, and I walked past him, out into the sunlight. The air felt lighter than it had in months. I stood there, breathing deeply, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. Then my phone rang. It was my lawyer. Congratulations, Linda, he said. The company's officially yours. What's next? I smiled faintly. Now, I said. Now I rebuild from scratch. But this time, with people who deserve to be there. I looked back one last time at the building behind me, the place where my past had tried to destroy me. Then I turned away and walked toward the future I had just taken back with one call, one plan, and one unbreakable heart. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is peace. In life, betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes, it wears the face you once trusted the most. But remember this. Calm revenge speaks louder than anger. If this story touched your heart, hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories that prove one thing: karma never forgets.